Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1 of David Backstage. David Backstage is a podcast about behind the scenes of an original musical that has been written and directed by college students. And for this first episode, we have Josh Hershberger, who is the original creator, writer, idea man, so slay.
Yeah. Hey, I'm excited to do this. I've never done a podcast before, so it should be fun.
Heck yeah. So we're gonna get deep on this first episode and explain how the whole concept started. And our focus is to be vessels and disciples of the Lord and to just share our stories and how God's hand has so clearly been working throughout this entire process. And it's been 2 years in the making. So that's crazy. So we're starting with Josh. So Josh, tell us from the beginning, how did the idea for this concept start?
Yeah, so, I was in the very first, I don't know if it was the very first, but to my knowledge, the very first original musical at Olivet called Still, written by Ashley Sarver-Wachter. And it kind of just inspired me, that whole idea did, but that's like the musical part of it, and then everything else, so that was my freshman year, and then I'm a senior now, and then my sophomore year, I was just going through some stuff, and I just remember I was at a revival service, and I couldn't tell you what the revival was about, which I don't know how good that is, but after the service, I just remember I was like, I need to go to a practice room, so I did, and I went to that practice room, and I wrote a song in 3 hours. And I had never done anything like that before. But it was just... And I also never written a song like this before. I've only written, good, uplifting songs. This was just purely sad. And there was no, answer to it, which is really cool because now there kind of is.
What motivated you to start writing the song in the first place?
So I was having a tough time with a friendship of mine. And I just had to get it out. And this is one of the first times I fully experienced the power that I feel like I have been gifted to experience of writing music and to just get out what I'm feeling in that way. And so, yeah, I wrote that song, and it was a song of brokenness and abandonment. And so how that kind of led to David was, this was a particular friendship of mine, and I had someone who had compared me and this friend to David and Jonathan, and so I didn't think anything of it when I wrote the song, but as I continued with it, the New Works program had already been in full effect at Olivet. Prof. Sarver had encouraged us to do anything. We could do a musical like The Muse that was chosen the first year, or we can just show them what we have. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I can do a song. And so I turned this song that was about my friend and I into a song about David and Jonathan. And so much more happened since then.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So the New Works Festival is an opportunity for students to present their original works. Mm-hmm. And it was first created by Professor Ashley Sarver, who is Ashley Wachter now, as Josh said. But a lot of students have had the opportunity to write their original play, original musical, original scripts of any sort, and they are presented. And so the way that Olivet is working with that is that every year for the New Works Festival, students come together, present their works.
Students could be chosen to potentially have their work performed.
Yeah, and produced and funded. Mm-hmm. And it's a big deal. The first New Works Festival, you presented David, right?
Yeah. So there's a whole lot there. So I was completely alone at the beginning, in terms of just writing the music. And at first, I just wanted to present a couple songs, but then, as we know now, it has turned into a full-fledged musical.
Yup.
Hopefully 2 hours.
And no more.
Yes. But so I wrote this first song, and it's called Till I See You Again. It's between David and Jonathan. And then I just kind of started playing with this almost like siren melody, and that is what we now know as Bathsheba's. And so that song came to be. But I mean, I had some friends at the time that I was talking to about, and who were also involved in theater, and actually both have written stuff for New Works too. But I just kind of showed them what I was working on, and they wanted to help. I know Cece was one of the beginning ones. I also distinctly remember Sarah being like, I want to help with this.
So, Cece Clark,
yes,
Sarah Breinig.
yes.
Shout out to them.
Yes, absolutely. Sarah, bless her heart, read all of the story of David with me.
Dang.
Over winter break, over Christmas break. We spent a lot of hours on that.
Yeah.
Not only reading, but also just like discussing what we could do with the script and what we could like do with this story, because there is a lot.
Yeah.
And we didn't cover it all. Samuel's ghost is not in our show. So that'd be pretty cool. But yep. But
First and second Samuel are wild.
they are, but they're great. I mean,
oh yeah, lots of truth.
Yeah. But so then I just had friends coming along, and like one after the other, things just started falling into place. So next was DJ Dejaliana Herrig. Absolute shout out to you. I was at a Friendsgiving, and she was just playing this song, and I was like, what's this song? And she's like, I wrote it. And just immediately I was like, wait a second. You write music. I can't write music. I've never written music before. I've written maybe 2 songs. Can you help? And she's like, yeah, I'd love to. And it turns out that song that she wrote just fit really well with the character of McCall. And like that song is going to be performed as McCall's song like next month.
Oh my goodness.
That's 2 years ago. Like,
wow.
I don't remember how well I knew Tiana Guthrie, but she came along, I think, through DJ, because we would practice and we would write together in the piano lab. And then I remember just one day Tiana came in and like was listening to what we were doing, and she's like, this is really cool. Then she started like choreographing this waltz for Bathsheba. And then I was just showing her some other stuff, and she was like, you know what? I want to do this too. And so she wrote 2 of the songs. And then also Cece has helped. She helped with so many lyrics, because lyrics are not my forte. But Till I See You Again is one of the first things that I just played and I sang and it happened. And I remember Taryn Fairchild, who wrote The Muse, I remember him telling us a story about From All the Ashes, which is one of the last songs. And he said, that song was not me.
Yeah.
Like, it just happened. And that was God.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me that I can say that about Till I See You Again, because it was such like a depressing and just no hope song. It was a personal song to me, and it was legitimately about like having to say goodbye to a friend, not in like a death way, but like, you know, that those goodbyes are hard sometimes. The song literally ends with the friend telling the other that like he has to move away, and the other friend is like, he goes to say something, but then he's just like, you know what, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
And he just like bottles it in. I can't even get into in a short podcast episode of how dark that time of my life was, and how dark that song came from. But now, like, the way that God has taken that and done more than I could have ever thought. Like, it's crazy. People always say, like, God can do so much more than you can ever even imagine. And you're like, okay, but, like, what does that mean? And, like, I have a taste of that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
So the first time you guys presented this at New Works.
So we presented songs from me, Cece, Tiane, DJ. I think we did at least 13 songs.
Dang.
Yeah, it was a lot. And we wrote a lot in a short time. And there were songs that were written like the week of the performance. But
whoa, that's crazy.
Like the finale song, Psalm 119, I'm pretty sure we finished that week. We presented it all, and we just did the music, sat in a little row of chairs, and we stood up and we sang our songs when it was our turn, CC Clark's play, The Time We Have, was actually the one that was chosen for New Works that year.
So then New Works 2023 comes. What, like, motivated you to keep pitching this and presenting this? Because the first time it didn't get chosen. Yeah. So, like, what made you be like, let's do this again?
Mm-hmm. You know, the first time it wasn't chosen, it was hard. Like, it was a little bit, like, we put a lot of work into it. And so not being chosen, like, it kind of hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
And I put it off for a while. I didn't touch any of the music or anything. But I knew I wasn't done.
Yeah.
I just knew that there's so much to this. I actually took a topics in theater class last fall where I learned how to, well, hopefully, script writing. And I was like, I don't want to touch David because that's a little bit too of a soft spot for me. I think just again and again, it's just, it was God. Like,
yeah.
He wanted this to happen, so it's happening. Like,
right.
There's not much more I can say.
Where did you start with, like, gathering your team for the second presentation for that?
Yeah, well, I didn't have a team the first one at all. I did, but it was not anything organized. It was me, CC, like DJ Tiare, like that was pretty much it. But I guess the main thing is the fateful day at Stafari.
Oh, yes.
When me, you, and Brian Deacon, a good friend of ours, when we went to Stafari, and it was kind of not planned on my part.
It was not. I think that was all Brian, which is also
actually,
crazy.
I think it kind of was me. Because...
Wait, really?
Yeah, okay. I don't think that I was, like, so, like, totally invited. But I wanted to get out of my apartment.
Really? Okay.
And I also needed food. So
yeah, so true.
But, I mean, I definitely did not plan anything of that to happen at that day and that time.
And we weren't even, like, friends.
Yeah.
We've been in, like, shows together. The first one we were in, we didn't even know we existed. But, like, we were in the theater. Like, do you remember that? That's crazy. But, like, that morning, I was taking directing class. And so we were working on directing major scenes. So I had a rehearsal with my cast that morning. And Brian and I had plans to get coffee and to just talk, hang out. And then he's like, oh, do you mind if Josh comes? And I'm like, oh, absolutely. Like, let's do it. I just remember that day so clearly. Like, that day is just core memory. There was, like, 2 feet of snow or something. Like, we were driving so slow to stuff. We were driving so slowly to this coffee shop in town. And we get our coffees, we sit down, and we just, like, all 3 of us talk about God and our faith, and we share a bit of our testimonies. But we're talking a lot about, like, spiritual experiences, and after that, I think you texted me that day.
Well, okay, I have something to add.
Yeah.
Before that, you were talking about Narnia.
Oh, so true.
Your little passion project.
Oh.
And I was like, I know what that's like. But I just remember, like, just the way you were talking about this thing that, like, you wanted to do. I was like, I want this on my team. Like, someone with this drive. Because, like, there's been a lot of times where it feels like I'm, like, the main one, like, pushing everything.
Yeah.
And, I mean, now that you're the director, it just makes perfect sense. But I just remember the way that you were talking about the project that you wanted to do and how passionate you were about it. I was like, you sound like me. And... let's, like, I want you on my team. And so I texted you that day. And I was like, hey, so, and I think I had told you a little bit about David that day, too. I asked you if you wanted to be involved with it.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what you said, but...
I remember the text conversation being like, hey, so because of our conversation today, and you were saying, like, because of that, and, like, us talking about the Lord, and you were like, crazy.
So this goes into the story of New Works this year, and how so different it was. Yeah, so then I got you involved in the team, and then I just remember, I don't know what prompted it, but I was like, all right, let's get going. So I made a group chat of you, Brian, Cece, and I'm like, all right.
Oh yeah.
You guys are my main
What?
team. So I want you guys on my team. Let's get going. I don't know what we're gonna do. I don't know how to do this, which is kind of why I need you guys.
Mm-hmm.
But let's do it. And you all were like, yeah, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the next things that happened was I sent a little email to Prof. Davis. Like, we met with her, and I was very... I was very...
It's all coming back.
I'm kind of a cryptic person. And so I sent this email. I'm like, special project. That's the subject line. I'm like, she was very optimistic about it and everything.
Yeah.
But one of the things she said was like, I want you guys to have a team. I don't remember how it all happened, but I ended up asking Cammie to be the director. And, like, the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. That was so crazy because the way you kind of came into my life with David, I was also in a very, very dark place. I was very new to my relationship with the Lord. I've grown up as a pastor's kid and did all the things, but it was like there was an actual encounter with him in November. The friend I experienced that with said, God is calling you to lead. And I was like, ain't no way, girl. Me? Like a little small Latina girl? That's not me. Looking back now and seeing the whole process we've been having with David, Josh was considering who to direct and stuff, and he was writing names down. And as soon as I said this, I was like, instant regret. But I was like, I mean, I'm taking that directing class. Like, if you desperately need someone, like, I wouldn't be opposed. But I wasn't, like, fully for it. Like, I had zero confidence. And he was like, okay, good to know. So I was one of the names he wrote down. And then I was acting in a show at the time. And on opening night, I was just sitting by myself in the theater, just taking in the silence of the theater and all that stuff. And Josh comes in and he's like, by the way, you're the director for David. And I was like, oh, what? I was like, my brain and body are like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm not capable. I'm not experienced for this. And like, but I like physically could not say no. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like immediately so scared. And I'm like, I'm going to fail everyone. Just, all those kinds of thoughts. And as we're continuing to work on this, you were showing me one of the songs, and I can't remember what specific song it was, and it makes me really sad. But there was a bunch of us in the theater, and as I'm listening to this song, I just get this, like, very strong feeling of, like, hope and confirmation and glory and, like, peace, like, all this stuff at once. And then I just get this, like, this musical is going to happen. And I'm like, I gotta go. And I just stood up and kind of just left Josh, and I go find Brian, because he was there from the beginning with all this, like, spiritual experiences and, like, encounter with the Lord. So he just knew all about it. And I just go up to him. I have tears in my eyes because this, like, presence is just so powerful. And I'm like, David's gonna happen. And he looks at me, and he's like, yeah, it is. I'm like, okay, anyways, see ya. And then I go back to Josh and we start working. And yeah, then we put the performance together, and it was the most stressful week of my entire life because we did have 1 week, and we just got our friends to, like, be in the cast and, like, learn all these songs so quickly, and it was so stressful. And it was in fact chosen, and now we are, like, a month in of our official rehearsals with our official cast and team, and we're about to put this on in a couple weeks. I feel like a lot of us on this team and on this cast have come from a place of such brokenness. God has worked through that, and he's turned it around for something good. Mm-hmm. He turned it around, like, starting with you and with your friendship. I found myself one night very just overwhelmed by the weight of, like, wow, I get to bring this story to people, and I get to, like, lead this cast with Cammie and see God move. Like, I get to, like, it was overwhelming, and I was just, like, sobbing. And then I just started praying. I started praying for the cast. I started praying for the show. Yes, and come on now. For all that God wants to do with this show. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly, like, humbling to have those reminders. And when you are in doubt or stress with that, like, it's not about me thing. I'm I'm just purely just a vessel, and I'm just purely his servant, and I'm just following and obeying, and it's not easy. It's so freaking scary. But like taking those steps with him, like putting those reminders in my head, like he's kept his promise. He has kept his promise. And a huge point in David's life when he was doubting and he was giving into temptation and he was just so lost, God still kept his promise through all of that. And he's still keeping his promise now. He's still the same God. I feel like a lot of us forget, like, how real, like, the people in the Bible were. Like, I feel like, especially if we grow up with them, like, they're just stories. But when we have that realization of, like, these people were just like me. These people had the same God who was working in our lives. I was thinking, God created these people thousands of years ago. And thousands of years later, he creates us.
I hate when you say this.
Wait, what?
I said I hate when you say this. But not actually hate, just like...
Yeah, thousands of years later, he creates us to retell the story of these people that he created thousands of years ago. And to retell this story to his people now. And to retell it to remind people of his goodness through anything.
And if this whole cast can experience God's goodness and experience how he's working in this story, and that comes out of their performance, like, how can God not work?
Mic drop.
Like, how can people see that and be like, that wasn't God? There's no way. They're like, non-believers could come to this show, see this performance by these people who have experienced God working, and they, like, see God working.
Preach it up, bestie. Preach it up.
Like, I had an idea.
Yeah.
Can we pray to close off?
Yeah.
All right. Oh. All right. Dear God, thank you for just everything that you're doing right now. Right now. The things that we don't understand or the struggles that people are facing. I thank you for what you are doing right now, because you are so much bigger than whatever it is that can come against us. You're so much bigger than the enemy, who does not like that we're doing this show, but you're bigger. And you are fighting for us and with us, and you are here for us. So I just ask that you show us to go to you with whatever happens in these coming weeks. And after David, remind us that this is yours. Because we don't want to get in the way. Because this is your work through us, not vice versa. So thank you for your goodness throughout this whole process and for what you are going to do. In your name, amen.
Amen. This is the end of episode 1. God is so good. He is so good. All right, friends. Stay tuned for next episode. And peace.